This little presentation is about some of Meher Baba's work in 1952 and 1953 that was sent by him to publish in the Awakener magazines. We've included a brief backstory of the magazine's founder and editor, Filis Frederick, and how the seed was planted to start the magazine that was to become a central source of information about Baba for both the East and the West, a living chronicle of his advent. After waiting 9 years, Filis finally met Baba for the first time on May 10, 1952, in the lagoon cabin of the Meher Spiritual Center along with her friend Adele Wolkin. Baba said to her, "I have heard of you both from Norina and Elizabeth, and I have known you from within. You are intimate ones who love me so much as I love you." He nicknamed them in pairs, Elinor and Phil Adele. On another day at a meeting in the barn with Baba, Adele, John Bass, and perhaps others of the New York group, Filis presented the idea of starting a magazine devoted to him. His first concern was, how will it be financed? Who will support it? Adele spoke up and offered to give the first $500 to start it. Baba said it had to be published without advertisement. Baba asked John what he thought of the idea, and John grumped that he didn't think they could do it. Phil Adele stayed for 1 week as Baba's guests and were not allowed to do any work. This was May 1952, 1 week before Baba's car accident in Oklahoma. Filis took this photo of Baba on the center at this time. After the May 24th accident, Baba began his recovery in Elizabeth's house, Yupon Dunes, on the ocean for a month. Then he needed a secluded house to be found outside of New York City. Filis thought of an acquaintance she made through Jean Adriel, who had a nice home in Scarsdale and who happily agreed to leave the home so Baba and his large party could stay there for a few weeks. Baba stayed in the closed-in sun porch on the right side, which ran the length of the house front to back. He wanted a strong boy to help with his convalescence and push him around in his wheelchair. Filis remembered her 18-year-old nephew, Keith McGaffey, seen here in the photo. Baba liked him. He told him to become a doctor, which he did. After Baba went back to India, Filis once again focused on the Awakener magazine. The first issue was printed in July of 1953. She introduced the magazine with, "We are very happy to dedicate this little magazine, The Awakener, to the living, spiritually perfect master of our age, Meher Baba. For he is destined, we believe, to be one of the great spiritual awakeners of mankind, one of those great spiritual torches that come down every now and then to enlighten the hearts of men and to give them not only hope, but an actual foretaste of their ultimate end, union with God." Most of the stories in the first 2 volumes that follow Baba's movements in his fiery life phase were happening at the same time of the first printing of the magazine, but each volume was also chock full of other goodies, prayers and discourses by Baba, stories by disciples, poems, and much more. The serialized story by Ramju from November 1952 to April 1953 cannot be condensed into a 30-minute talk, but happily there is always the awakenermagazine.org to read the rest online. This remarkable account, written by one of the Master's oldest disciples, describes Meher Baba's latest phase, his fiery life, when, as he said, "Both freedom and bindings are consumed in the fire of divine love. 12 chapters, of which the first 2 are given, will appear in the Awakener. Since the auto accident in America, Baba had begun to move about very slowly, free from all external supports. For his own reasons, Baba had, about 20 years ago, disclosed to only a few of his disciples that Zarzari Zar Bakhsh was the master of Sai Baba. It was therefore news to most of the others when Baba told them this fact, and also pointed out the small cave where Sai Baba used to retire in seclusion during his lifetime. The repentance and prayer offered at the time of the gathering on November 8th at Meherabad was translated here in Urdu and Marathi. These translations were then read for Baba at the dargahs and samadhis visited by him. The prayer, previously dictated by Baba, always preceded all conventional prayers and formal ceremonies usually offered at such places. At the end, Baba would touch his forehead to the shrines, and after having some silver pieces placed there, would leave each shrine with backward steps until he reached the entrance. In this manner, Baba spent 4 hours from 7 to 11 on the morning of the 13th, walking all the way to the dargahs of Hazrat Zarzari Zar Bakhsh and 4 others, which included Burhanuddin, and Sayyid Zainuddin Shirazi is called Bhaviswen Khwaja, or the 22nd Master. This name is due to the popular belief that 21 masters preceding him transferred their spiritual charge to their successors by the token of the Arabian prophet's Peran, or shirt, which Zainuddin evidently did not part with. In the first part of the free life, culminating on July 10, 1952, bindings dominated freedom. It was in this first part that the personal disaster, for some years foretold by me, took place in the form of an automobile accident while crossing the American continent, causing me, through facial injuries, a broken leg and a broken arm, much mental and physical suffering. It was necessary that it should happen in America. God willed it so. In the second part of this free life, freedom had dominated bindings, and in the third part of this free life, commencing from November 15th, 1952, both freedom and bindings are consumed in the fire of divine love, which destroys the very basis of the illusion of duality and all its paraphernalia. Baba said, "All these years I have been recognized as a Sadguru and the Avatar. Later, in my new life, I lived the life of an aspirant in order to achieve complete mental annihilation. During the period of my free life, I have been leading the dual role of strength and weakness, and simultaneously the roles of master and devotee. Before plunging into my fiery life, I intend for the first and last time to pay homage to the 3 masters with whom I have been connected, Sai Baba, Upasni Maharaj, and Babajan, at their respective resting places, Shirdi, Sakori, and Pune. I shall then proceed to Bombay, bow down at the feet of musts and saints there, and then plunge into the fiery life wherein I will be the lover of God." On the afternoon of the 14th of November, 1952, Baba, as is characteristic of him, arrived at Meherabad a good while in advance of the time fixed for him and his party of about 25 men to start from there on the first stage of the mass darshan tour. Baba looked ill and complained of running a temperature, pain in the throat, and an uncomfortable feeling in the abdomen. "The doctors cannot at this stage say what the fever is due to. It might turn into anything," said Baba. "All the same, let us make the start and try to carry out the program already chalked out." Baba traveled by car and most of his men by a state transport bus, especially engaged for the trips to the Samadhi, the tombs, and the dargahs, the shrines, of Upasni Maharaj, Sai Baba, and Babajan. It was past sunset when they arrived at Sakori. Nearly 30 years had passed since Baba's last visit to this cradle of his spiritual life. What was once practically a desolate spot, detached from the village, had now turned into a fine suburb with temples and houses built around Maharaj's last resting place. At the gate, Godavari Mai and the men and women of Upasni Maharaj's ashram all received Baba with devotion and enthusiasm. Godavari Mai started to touch his feet, but Baba prevented her, as this was not permitted in the fiery life. Baba's arti was performed then. As love and reverence sparkled from their faces, they tenderly led Baba around the Sakori ashram, pointing out the spots that had once been so familiar to him. At every spot he went to, Baba bowed his head. Baba was then led to Upasni Maharaj's Samadhi, which he was visiting for the first and last time, and he bowed down very reverently and touched it with his forehead. It was a tense moment, and many among the men belonging to the two masters in one appeared visibly moved, probably due to the flood of reminiscence, particularly those of Baba's people who had attended the last rites of Maharaj in December 1941. Immediately after standing up, Baba, pointing to himself and then to the Samadhi, said, "Maharaj is here and not there." When he was shown the neat little building where there once had been a thatched hut, Baba recalled how he and Maharaj used to sit together in the hut late into night for hours, while others then living there with Maharaj would be asleep. "It was on this very site," said Baba, "that one night Maharaj outwardly acknowledged me to be the avatar." It was later on New Year's Day, January 1st, 1953, when at Soner, some stray talk prompted Baba to disclose, probably for the first time, a part of his talk with Maharaj in the Dahigaon meeting October 17, just a few months prior to Maharaj's passing away in 1941. It was as follows. "Maharaj requested me, 'Now speak, anything, something. You can, you should, in my presence.' He knew I would not and should not speak, having arrived at the state of the Ancient One, the Original One. When I did not speak, Maharaj knew, and I knew that he would drop his body shortly. He is listening now, and that is why I am telling you this much." After accepting the lavish refreshments offered to Baba and his men, the party left for Sai Baba's shrine at Shirdi. The previously commonplace surroundings there were found to be transformed by huge modern structures, and those who had lived with Sai Baba found it hard to recognize the original sights and scenes. In spite of the late hour, stray visitors continued passing in and out of the temple-like dargah without recognizing Sai Baba in the person of Baba among them. Like other outsiders, Baba bowed his head on the marble tomb of Sai Baba, as did the Mandali. Then Baba led his party to the small old mosque where Sai Baba used to sit with his devotees and listen to the Quran, which was recited to him for about a half an hour every day. Baba pointed out the brick on which Sai Baba used to rest his head. The brick had broken just before he dropped his body. Baba next drove to the Khandoba temple where Upasni Maharaj had remained confined for almost 3 years without food, according to Sai Baba's instructions, and where Baba had seen him first. He entered the temple and, mentioning to the Mandali about Maharaj's fasting without food or water, observed, "In those days, Sai Baba was eating large quantities of food, yet often complained that he was still very hungry." It was nearly 2 a.m. of November 15th at Pune when Baba Jan's Dargah was especially unlocked to enable Baba and his men to pay their respects there. After a little rest, Baba proceeded to Bombay, where he set out on his mission of obeisance to the musts and saints. We see some of his deep love for these lovers of the path outwardly expressed when he seeks them out in all parts of India, in their unusually remote haunts, and personally contacts them. They all know that things are going to happen as have never before happened. When the world will be blessed with my grace, it will be due to the eternal grace I enjoy from Baba Jan, Sai Baba, and Maharaj. On March 23, 1953, Baba gave darshan to the general public at Dehradun. The following are discourses spontaneously dictated by Baba at that time and taken down by Kishan Singh, a devotee of Baba, at whose house the darshan took place. To one who expressed keenly, "What is life?" Baba smilingly replied, "Life is a mighty joke. He who knows this can hardly be understood by others. He who does not know it finds himself in a state of delusion. He may ponder over this problem day and night, but will find himself incapable of knowing it. Why? People take life seriously and God lightly, whereas we must take God seriously and life lightly. Then we know that we always were the same and will ever remain the same, the originator of this joke. This knowledge is not achieved by reasoning, but it is the knowledge of experience." And now a little bit about Filis and her interesting family, the Frederick McGaffey family. The beginnings of what will forge out into one's destiny in life can sometimes be seen clearly in the history of the family that one chooses to be born into. Filis's mother, father, sisters, and brother were all writers, editors, and more. The children were encouraged to read, be creative, independent thinkers, engage in family conversations. Filis's mother, Christine McGaffey Frederick, started the Advertising Women of New York when she wasn't allowed entrance into the men's club. Late in life, she again reinvented herself, becoming an interior designer. Her magnum opus was Selling Mrs. Consumer, the gospel of home efficiency, seeing matters material and spiritual as interconnected. She was consulting editor for many magazines of the time. Her work is noted as part of a permanent exhibition, Notable American Women, the Modern Period in the Museum of Modern History. She met Baba at Hilda Fuchs' home in Los Angeles. Filis's father, J. George Frederick, was at one time official greeter for the city of New York, president of the Gourmet Society. He wrote Masters of Advertising, The History of Advertising, and he started the first business research company. He wrote best-selling cookbooks, the Long Island Seafood Cookbook, Pennsylvania Dutch Cookery, and gave lectures on food and cooking. He also held group meetings for the top intellectuals of the time in New York, who would gather at his home. Among them was Billy Eaton. He told her she may want to meet his daughter, since both were interested in spiritual matters as well. He met Baba twice, 1952 and 1956. Filis's sister, Jean, worked with Voice of America, with Chester Bowles in India, before and after he was ambassador to India, and wrote many magazine articles. Filis's brother, David, was managing editor at Harper's Magazine. This is Filis at 12 years old. She was sent to the best of schools. Filis attended Abbott Academy, then 2 years at Cornell and 2 years at Radcliffe. She majored in fine arts with a minor in philosophy. She was impressed by Ramakrishna's "Seek the Feet of the Living Master." She was a copywriter and an editor for Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and McCall's. She met Adele at this time. Meher Baba predicted his work in the West would be done by women. Filis said she had the unique privilege of meeting and working with most of them. At the end of their stay in India in 1941, Baba had sent his trio, Princess Norina Machiavelli, Countess Nadine Tolstoy, and Elizabeth Patterson, back to the West to work together to spread his message of love and truth. They lived together in a duplex on East 67th Street. Norina gave public talks on Baba, both in their home and in public places, and Filis, 28, who also lived in New York City, had received a card inviting her to a public one. She never could find out who sent it to her. At the talk, she recognized the trio instantly from a dream she had of them. She and her friend Adele were then invited to their home around Christmas time in 1943 and got their first look at Baba's photos, his lovely face. Norina invited them to live with them. Shortly afterwards, feeling it was Baba's wish for them to help prepare things for Baba's visit, which would happen 9 years later. This was a year before Elizabeth found Meher Spiritual Center in 1944, where they all lived and worked on the center in the early days to clear the land. One of her tasks was to take down in shorthand Norina's thought transmission talks and help with correspondence, so started her Baba writing. Over time, she heard about the Meher Baba Journal that Norina and Elizabeth edited while living in India. That thought must have gotten tucked away on the back burner of her mind at the time, slowly cooking up the idea of another magazine about Baba, only one made in America this time. The seed was planted. Why did Baba choose women for his main work in the West? A good question. A clue may be found in Baba's statement that in the East it is the men who are spiritual, and in the West it is the women. He also had said Eastern souls were now being incarnated in the West, and vice versa. Filis also felt it was of great influence that Mehera, Baba's female counterpart, shared suffering of his accident in America in 1952, spilling her blood next to his on American soil, and that it might symbolize a breakthrough for women everywhere, but especially in the West. Here is Filis at her Hermosa Beach home in 1980. Filis Frederick made 67 issues over 33 years, dedicating her entire life to spreading Avatar Meher Baba's love and words. She left herself out, but deserves to be listed among the women of the West who did Baba's work all her life. And now, the Awakener is being read online all over the pandemic globe, which probably makes her very happy. Baba sent cables to Philip over the decades praising her work. Here are two. Baba wishes to tell you that he thinks the Awakener is coming on wonderfully and knows the love that is put into it and is very happy about it. He sends his love and blessings to you and all who helped to make it such a message of love. We all enjoy it very much. And I feel happy this morning. Why? Yesterday Adi told me the notes on the Sahavas were wanted. There are notes on the Indian Sahavas from Deshmukh, Chari, Murti, and Iyer. Reports on discourses, gestures, translated by Erich into words. I have given them to Filis for the Awakener.